right. I missed you at the restroom. How are you guys doing?
Good. This is awesome.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk a little bit about obviously speaking, doing it confidently, potentially hosting events depending on what we get through. But I want to hear from you guys first. If you've had speaking experience, and then also what are some of the things that you really struggle with when it comes to speaking and leading from the front of the room. So let's start with Eureka.
Oh my. Okay. So speaking experience, not necessarily. No. With our business, when we teach classes, yes, you kind of are, but not like on a large scale, just on a like smaller scale. And the biggest struggle, I think it's twofold for me. It's like an autonomic struggle physically, like having to like pee your pants. You know what I mean? That whole feeling of like, I'm going to be sick, but I'm not, and getting past that point of rehearsal and being like authentic. That balance of rehearsing and that's the biggest thing for me, because I feel like my most creative flow is when I'm just like there, but at the same time, that's not good preparation and so that balance.
Yeah, that's good. Misty, we're talking about if we've had speaking experience and then what we struggle with. And I actually want to add, and you can finish this video, is what our like hope or dream or vision is when it comes to speaking and leading from the front of the room. So you want to finish that last part?
Yeah. So I think for me, my biggest hope and dream is, from the speaking aspect, is that's a good question. I think, like, for example, last night as I was praying and going home, and in my prayer, one of the biggest things was, like understanding that your words have impact and words create and words, like evoke vision and emotion and all of those things, and being able to confidently do that in a way that does and with speaking, you kind of have to read the room, but at the same time, that's also a false thing too, because sometimes your audience can be super receptive and like really be taking notes and really be loving it and being moved, but not necessarily be expressive. And so understanding that balance of like, I can't be led by the energy of the room, I have to bring the energy to the room, but also knowing how to read the room as well and speak to it.
Love it.
But so the big thing, I think, to answer your question, is being able to authentically like really create a shift in the atmosphere despite what's already there.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I'll just piggyback off of what you're saying. Like, one of the biggest things when it comes to speaking and really like facilitating and holding space for the room is being the thermostat, right? Because it's easy to be a lot of people, they just think that they are like the thermometer, right? Where they're just like affected by the temperature of the room or affected by the people of the room. But when you're confident in not only your identity and like who you are, what you're called to do, what you bring to the table, then that allows you to be more of the thermostat in the room, right? And a thermostat, right, if you think about your house, like, if it gets a couple degrees off, it kicks on and it changes the atmosphere of the room. And so knowing that as a confident speaker, like, you are the one that sets the atmosphere, like, you are the one that sets the temperature of the room, you are the one that like, right, can bring people in, that can acknowledge when they're looking at you, and yes, there are people that are like, oh, I'm doing notes or I'm looking at my phone, like whatever, like they're probably not the people that you're going to connect with in those moments, which is okay. But when you can draw people in, you can set the temperature of the room, that is huge when it comes to speaking confidently. So I love that. So with the few people that jumped in, we're just briefly chatting about if we've had a little bit of speaking background, what we struggle with when it comes to speaking, and then what kind of our hope or the dream is, or maybe you feel called to lead from the front of the room, but what that could look like for your future. So, Misty.
So, okay, where do I start again? What was the first thing?
If you've had kind of past, present, like what you struggle with, and then future.
So past, yes. I was in business and I led, a bunch of, I spoke often, but then I took about 10 years off, and that, changed things. So presently, I would just say confidence and practice, and I don't want to practice. So can we not do that today? I just want to
get away with that.
Practice. And I think the reason I would want to be able to speak in front of people is so that I can do podcast circuits, so I can, get on or Instagram circuit and just be able to speak and collaborate, and just be prepared and ready for the opportunities that come up.
Awesome. I love that. Nicole?
I'm like really popping in for this. Okay, and you're gonna have to remind me of the question.
So, any past speaking experience, presently, what struggles or what frustrates you around speaking, and then future-wise, what you could see yourself doing or what you hope to do as you confidently grow as a speaker?
Okay, so past, I suffer from some crazy social anxiety. Like having one-on-one conversations, I'm really awkward. It's funny because people are like, hey, you're a super extroverted. I'm like, well, I am now, but Franny can contest. I would get into sales meetings and I would break out into hives, trying to sell people wedding packages.
So just wear scarves.
I had to wear scarves, like part of like my attire, because I would get so nervous. I think over 13 years of business, I am used to talking to people now, and so it's not as big of a deal, but I am still socially awkward, which I think kind of comes off, I don't know, maybe not as friendly as I want it to. I'm having to put myself into a lot of uncomfortable situations. I coach people one-on-one a lot. I coach on Zoom a lot, but we now have podcasts that I have to talk on, and even if I'm alone in a room, I still get nervous. Alone in a room. It's just, so that is presently, we spoke at Craft and Commerce, which was huge for me. It's crazy that I
it was so good.
There.
It was so good.
It was really hard doing it together. We're just learning every single day. I think in the future, we're just gonna have to be putting ourselves out there more and more and just being brave. And I don't know. I love speaking about things that I'm passionate about. So if it's something I'm excited about, I kind of don't care who's in the room. I'm just like, oh, people are listening to me talk, So, but no, I get nervous alone in a room by myself. So that's where we're at.
Love it. Love it. All right, Sandra.
I did a lot of public speaking in other jobs, which was a great place to hide behind because it was their agenda, so I was always presenting for that. And really just my experience right now is doing lots of webinars and being on a lot of podcasts, but really getting up on big stages I haven't really come into that arena yet, but working towards it. And I did hire a coach this year that is all about having my signature talk and getting up and selling from stage. And her whole thing is making you go global. So I really stepped into it big, and then now I'm in the what did I just put myself into? But I have like a that's why I left it open. Go anywhere you want.
Don't play.
So there's a lot of fear, and what I'm really working on is I just had my human design reading a couple days ago, and it really came up in there that I am meant to be doing that, and really the evaluation that was given to me was that I have the intuitive ability to read the room, so I need to show up and be able to know what I'm talking about, but also be able to see what's needed, and be able to channel that and be able to speak from that place. So that's where I'm at, and my vision is that I am on stage doing this all the time. And that's terrifying. But I'm excited.
Love it.
Yeah.
Awesome. So I have actually, in one way or another, from age like 6 to probably 19 been on stage. I was a singer. I was a opera singer. Like,
Oh, wow.
my parents threw me onto a little stage anytime that I wanted to. And it's that whole temperature thing, because a lot of the time in those kind of settings, they don't do a peep while you perform. They sit there, they watch you, and then at the end they roar. So I learned that was a normal reaction very early on. I got married, had 3 kids in less than 2 years. They are not twins. They were all just that young. And whatever went on with my body, it took me another 15 years to get that weight off. So I literally in the last 2 years, or in 2 years ago, no, a year ago, I had lost 130 pounds. So I went for 20 or 18 years not being in front of anybody, being very invisible on purpose. And so now,
Here you are.
coming out of that is very, very weird, because your face, how you hold your body, how you don't have to suck in here, stand this way, your posture, everything has changed. So I'm not sure if it needs to be a coach. I can talk to anyone. Literally, if I could make a nickel every time, I would, like, that's what we do for a living. But the fact is that to be comfortable in that space that you stand in is very comfortable for you. I'm relearning what that looks like from when I was 6 to 18 or 19 to be in front of people, and because I was very comfortable then, and then kind of went dormant, and now, you know what I mean? Yeah. So there's where I struggle with. I'm not, and like I said, a lot of videoing, a lot of being in front of the mirror, just learning how to rehold myself and express that and move and see how the stage works again. So it's very interesting. So fun, amazing, love it. I'm so excited. But yeah, that's where I'm struggling right now, or working through.
Okay, where do you see yourself?
Definitely on stage. In a 10 years ago, I went, oh, you know what? I kind of have a weird, great story, like life story, that you can come from nothing and go and like really come from nothing, come from a struggle and end up somewhere amazing. So probably helping people and empower them to know that it doesn't matter where you come from, it's your choices and your journey on the way. So I think that's my space. I think that's where God expects me to be and end up, which is kind of accidentally where I've been headed for the last 5 years. So yeah, we're just moving along. Nice. Moving along. It'll be amazing. Very nerve-wracking, but it'll be amazing.
So I will circle back around to, we're just talking about any speaking experience that we've had, what we currently are struggling with or afraid of when it comes to speaking, and then with the future vision, like on our heart, like what we might have been called to do, that type of a thing, just the vision of what it looks like to speak and communicate from the front of the room. So we'll circle through here and you can kind of stop.
So I grew up with a speech impediment, and I went to speech therapy for about 5 years when I was younger. No one could really understand me. I felt like I was very invisible. I felt like I had to hide in my own shell. And it was really just scary for me being younger. I was the shy girl just because my voice scared me. I'm like, oh my gosh, no one understands me. And it was just so hard and embarrassing. And once I got into my teenage years and I started my business, it was such a huge thing because now my voice mattered. Now people wanted to hear it. And that was so cool for me because it gave me the confidence of, oh, my words do matter. Like, people are actually listening to them now and people are taking them to heart, and I can really utilize my voice. So in the past 2 years, I was very scared to be present on social media. I was very scared. I mean, I was doing so well in business that people started to look at me at such a young age, but then I got to the point where I'm like, okay, since I'm afraid, it doesn't mean I can't speak, or I can't be a speaker, or I can't have a podcast, or I can't use my voice. I can be afraid and still do this. There's always an and to it. So even though you guys might be feeling like, oh, I'm scared, or all this imposter syndrome, everyone feels that, you know, especially starting something new. So right now I've been playing around with my podcast for a year just to be able to use my voice and get more comfortable with it and to see how do I like to use it and play around with it. And it's been super fun. I've done like a lot of Zoom meetings too, coaching women. I've been speakers on other podcasts, YouTube channels, and then events like this as well. So I am starting to feel really good. And I'm like, how do I get more comfy in this? You know, how do I actually make this more sexy and fun and, you know, just play around with being a speaker. So in the future, I do want to be a paid speaker around the world, travel, use my voice to help women create multiple streams of business and just find confidence, even though, you know, they might come from a place where it is super scary, you know, or maybe they didn't have the best environment growing up, or maybe they started from nothing like I did and made it into something. So that's kind of where I'm headed.
Nice.
Well, actually growing up, like I have it written on my little journal that I wanted to be a motivational speaker, like when I grew up forever. So I kind of do that with what I do in group fitness. I do a lot of like coaching and talking, especially like in yoga, like helping people tap into like inner child. So I feel very comfortable speaking when I'm moving. It just feels super authentic to me. I don't even have to think about it. But when it comes to like maybe an event like this, where I would love to have one of those, or speaking on social media, and I do have a podcast, I just like cringe when I hear myself back. I'm like, like this, I don't know if I can do this. Like I say, and I'm like, oh, I flipped my hair like a million times on the video. Like, why did I do that? Because it's like the nervous habit, like, oh no, oh, like this. And I'm just like, wow. I mean, that's who I am, but at the same time, I want to learn how to speak professionally, and I would love. For me, it's like I want to learn the strategies. Like, how do you get sponsors for events? How do you actually have this strategy of like, you know, kind of like a comedian, how they're working up to that punchline. It's like how are you staging your talks where you're working up to that punchline, or trying to sell something, or having this like aha moment where people feel something so deep from you. And I don't really know how to do that. I know how to do it through movement, but I don't actually know how to do it through speaking yet. So that's kind of where I want to go with that. And I would like, you know, I've told you my dream is like to have like my own events where I could do through movement leading, but also like have speakers and tell my story. And then also I get really emotional. And so like, I'm even getting emotional right now. So how do you like just hone in and say, okay, like how can I put the emotions here? Like I think it's okay to have some, but not like the squeaky voice that I'll start to have. You know what I'm saying? Like the pause. So that's kind of where I want to go, but really just like strategy, like you do your, you know, and you know, I always say that charity is like the Chick-fil-A of events, right? Like the customer service, the aesthetics, like that's how I am too. I would want it to
It's
be
gotta
like,
be cute.
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Right. It's like I would want it to feel like that dope soul vibe that I always want people to feel in my classes. You know what I'm saying? But you know, how do you get that into aesthetics too for your event? You know, so all the things.
All of it. Perfect.
Great.
I love the energy and the passion coming off of her.
Totally.
Yeah.
So yeah, ever since I came out of the womb, I was like, is this thing on? Hello? Like, pay attention to me?
Yeah.
Are you a firstborn?
No.
Oh, middle.
No, I'm the baby. I have one sister, she's 10 years older than me, so
Oh,
maybe
wow.
that's what it was. Yeah.
Yeah,
She was a
okay.
cheerleader, which was super cool.
Oh.
Just wanted to be cool like her. Let's see. So I think the first like actual speaking thing I did was locally here at what is it? Why am I blinking?
I forget what it's called. It was for
The Crown Collective. the Crown Collective, and it was a group of hairstylists and beauty professionals, and I was so intimidated. Like I said today, like when you look out and everybody's just like so pretty, they smell good, and you're like, I'm like, oh gosh, you know. And I remember being so nervous for that talk, and I think I was talking about social media or some branding or something like that, and I was trying to relate to the audience, which I think is my favorite thing to try to do, is to tweak every time I speak to be specific to that industry, and I know nothing about the beauty industry at all. And so I was up there and I was really nervous and I was shaking, and like a couple minutes into the talk, my brain just literally said, like, you don't have room for this nervousness. Like, knock it off. It's not working. It's not helping you. It's actually like freaking you out, and everybody can tell, and you need to just like knock it off. And it's just like stopped.
Nice.
Like, I even had people say, like, you came on, you were so nervous, and then all of a sudden something like,
Yeah.
And I was like, I know that moment when that happened. And my hands stopped shaking, and then I started like kind of riffing a little bit and like reading, like feeling, just kind of going with it. So it kind of went off of my script. And I started talking about balayage and what was the thing? The TC lights. I know nothing about this stuff at all. And they were like eating it up, and like I was like, oh my gosh, like I have no idea what I'm talking about, but I'm pulling words, and like I felt like I was channeling like a hairstylist, like a dead hairstylist. Spirit.
Nice.
Like,
Love it.
Like,
it was good because you weren't pretending to know.
No.
It was like that. It was like the comic relief was like having somebody up there that like
Yeah.
had no idea and was just saying terms wrong.
So I literally just train wrecked, but they like loved it. And then I was like,
Yeah,
yeah,
enjoy
okay,
it.
we're gonna go with this. And I realized then that like it's just the most relatable thing is kind of like eating shit on stage, and people root for the underdog. And so that kind of made the fear part of it like leave my body,
Because we all feel like underdogs, even
Yeah.
if we're doing whatever.
Yeah.
You know.
Exactly.
So sure, makes sense.
Mhm. And then I got it done, and I went home, and I was like hyped. I mean, I had a lot of caffeine. It was like a lot, but the energy that I thought I would be drained from doing that, but I actually felt really energized. So I was like, I love this. And then they're like, Nicole, you have to try this. And she's like, oh, hell no. And so
Try this
then
drug. It's
I've been
awesome.
like pulling her tooth and nail onto stages, and I know that she's gonna love it one of these days. But Nicole's an amazing teacher, and she is really good at like really getting in deep with people, like one-on-one. And so I'm like, I know that together we have something that we just have to like figure out our gig. Like that's kind of the struggle right now, is the two of us figuring out how to share a stage. Because when I'm alone and I can riff and I can go off on my own thing and whatever, it's fine. But when we have to ping back and forth, it's actually really hard to navigate that. And we both feel really awkward, and then it's just, that's I think the main thing that we're trying to figure out, the special sweet spot, because we want to do it together. We want to grow our business and our awareness about our company as both of us. So I don't know, that's kind of something that we would love to, master a little bit more. The podcast has really helped. Like, we can sit there and talk back and forth on a podcast all day, and that's really fun. I get nervous recording by myself too. I don't get nervous with a guest or with Nicole, but by myself I do, even in a room by myself. I'm like, I start over the intro like 10 times. I was like, hey, ding dongs. And I'm like, blah. So, yeah, and in the future, I would love to host our own events, like that are specifically like branding, like deep dive, intensives, like a 2 or 3 day type of like conference or something like that for business owners, not specifically women, just anyone who, wants to like kind of like go in deep, like rip off the Band-Aid to get it all done. So like, we've always dreamt about doing conferences like that, and obviously like bringing in other people, but being the main speakers, like the hosts of the event. So I would love to learn from the master. Yeah, you just did like 4 events this week. I don't know what you're doing. I would love to learn. I'm all about paying other people to teach me the shortcuts. So that's my favorite thing to do. So anyway, I'll stop talking now.
Awesome. Love it. Thanks.
Maybe.
All right, Soraya, round us out.
Oh my gosh, that was so funny. I adore you. I can tell already. I would say that my biggest struggle is I don't actually, like, in my mind, I'm not scared or nervous or anything, and I know that like I'm for some people and I'm not for other people, and I'm totally cool with that. So like I just come as I am, but my body is like
oh no, you are scared. You're gonna shake the whole time that you're like, I did a photo shoot yesterday, and seriously, I was sitting on the stool, and the guy's like, are you gonna fall over? For real, because my legs were just like, but I'm like, no, I'm fine, I'm not scared, like, I could do this, but my body is like, and like, my voice will be shaky, like, I used to sing, well, I mean, I can still sing,
Yeah.
on stage, it's all like, why? Like, you sang this so great, like, 5 seconds ago, what is your problem? But I can't figure out how to, like, get my mind to control my body, because my body's like, do you know what I mean?
Yep.
So,
Well, your brain thinks that you're in danger.
it needs to stop.
Like, if it's unfamiliar, your brain just thinks you're in danger.
Like, you're
And
literally how you just like
think
turn
like
it
a
off.
saber-toothed tiger is coming to eat you.
I don't know how to turn it off. The tiger is there. Like,
You just have to prove to yourself that
That's
you're
how
not.
I feel too. 'Cause I logically don't really care
right. Like, I'm
about the
fine.
opinions. Like logically,
my
I
heart's
don't, and then I get up there and I'm like betrayed.
I know. What is happening?
So
Yes.
crazy.
Yeah, it's scary.
We need more time for these things.
We do. Did the text?
No, I don't.
Or
No, it's
like, what's
No.
27.
We need
We're
a day.
27.
I love this and love hearing like where you're at in your process and what it is, because I totally have like been in every single one of your shoes and feel a lot of what you feel still, and I've been doing it for a long time. And there's a couple things that have made the biggest difference for me when it comes to like leading from the front of the room. The first one is knowing that you're meant to, right? So whether you're the person that's like that's born that says like, is this thing on, right? Like, hello, like I am totally made for this, compared to the person that's like, I felt like I was never seen, I was never heard, right? Because we see both, right? It's this juxtaposition that we see both. Like some of us, like, yeah, we are absolutely like, we know, like for me, it was like, I knew that I was called to lead from the front of the room. I went through a big journey of some of that invisibility, of some of that like afraid to offend people, like, oh, I'm not enough. I actually really struggled with a lot of low self-esteem because I showed up either as not enough or too much.
Yes.
Never really figured out where I fit in, right? And so I had to really go through that growth journey, right? Because there's this, yes, we're made for it, and what we struggle with is also a really big part of our calling. And then, so knowing, like, regardless, I think that everyone at least has a book, at least one book in them, for sure, like that their story matters. And I don't see why not anyone is called to lead from the front of the room. And that is just it's a process of owning what that looks like. And a lot of times doing it afraid, a lot of times doing it shaking because you feel like a tiger's gonna like, you know, like a lot of it's dragging your friends onto whatever, onto these events. And it's reminding your body that it's okay, like I'm safe, because we're actually only born with 2 fears, right? So she's only born, we are all only born with the fear of falling and the fear of loud noises. Everything else is learned. And so, okay, like what are the conversations that I'm having before I'm getting up on stage? And how can where have I heard that before? And how can I unpack that later in my healing journey? And then also understanding that the energy that we show up with is, right, that's that part of that thermostat. And it's also, like if you're nervous, that's a good thing. Like that, it's just energy, right? So if we can reframe that I'm nervous and a tiger's coming after me compared to, oh, I really care about this thing. Right? Like, and it matters. Like, that's excitement. Like, there's a difference in reframing fear versus excitement, because our brain, it's the same neurons, it's the same, you know, it's the same dopamine, it's like a different whatever neurotransmitters that get secreted into our bodies. And so it matters how we interpret it. And then also understanding that when it comes to how we feel, that body language or communication is 93% nonverbal, right? So most people, I'm sure you've heard this, they will never remember what you say. They'll only remember the way that you make them feel. And for us as humans, there's a deep, ingrained need for us to feel seen, heard, loved, and belong. And so if you can come to a space knowing that you can provide that, right? I can see you in your story, and I can hear what you're saying, and I can connect. You know, you find those people that in the room. It's not going to be everyone. Like what? Sorry, who was saying? Yeah, where it's like, oh, like everyone is like, you know, they got their RBF. You know, and I'm up here and I'm like, am I sucking right now? Right? So it's like, and they're like, honestly, they're probably just really concentrating on what you're saying, right? So now it's up to me to interpret what that looks like when someone does have an RBF. I'm like, oh, she hates what I'm saying. You know, she's concentrating, right? And then I find those people that are in the room that are responding, that are shaking their head, that are paying attention, right? They're the good listeners. They've got the smiles on their faces, because those are the people that are receptive in the room, and that's who I get to connect with. And that's how you start to capture the room. That's how you start to facilitate the room. And then another thing when it comes to speaking is, how many of you guys have ever, right, you are, maybe you've been up, you led from the front of the room, whether it was a workshop or a major stage, or, you know, a smaller type of a group at home. And when you're done, right, you should all over yourself. It's, oh, I should have said this. I should have, right? Maybe it's your podcast. Oh, I should have done this. Oh, I should, right? Like, we start to should all over ourselves. Anybody?
Yes.
Right? Sure. So another thing that I found that's really, really helpful is to stop shitting all over myself, right? And that's easy to do, but they're also, like, there's this higher level conversation that we can have with ourselves that says, no, actually, what I said in the exact moment was exactly what was needed to be heard. And exactly what I didn't say was not meant to be said. So there's an element of trust that goes along with that, because maybe you would have told that story, but it would have totally fallen flat in that room. So again, when it comes to, like, back to the, like, trusting yourself, like knowing that you're meant for it, like there's a trust element of actually, like, what I'm feeling to say right now is meant to be said, and trusting that, right? So that comes from practice. And so, oh, Misty's gone. She's like, don't make me practice, but we are. We're going to practice. And I'm going to teach you a quick little, Russell Brunson talks about it. It's called hook, story, offer. Okay? And a lot of times when it comes to speaking, people can talk about these really fluffy, like ethereal, or like these vague concepts. Right, like, oh, this thing that's way up here, or this dream that I have, right? It's these floating type of topics. They don't ever ground it in anything. And so I remember when I was first learning how to do this, it was actually, I would just talk about, like, a big part of my Meant for More message is a lot of personal growth. It's a lot of, you know, like, letting go of limiting beliefs and all these, like, concepts that are out here. But what did it look like actually in my life when I walked through the fact that when I walked into a room, I was either too much or not enough. I was so afraid of offending people. I was a recovering people pleaser, right? And so I would, like, hide in the corner of the room, and then people thought I was a big bee.
Right?
Right?
Yeah. Like, I'm just trying to keep myself in check
Totally,
here so that
right.
you don't hate me later. No,
Because I'm trying to do
but
that,
they're already
hate
hating
me,
you.
right?
Yeah.
So it was like this whole process that I had to unlearn. But I had to start to ground these concepts in real life stories. And the storytelling aspect of things is really important, because again, people will never remember what you say. They will only remember the way that you make them feel. And the way that you capture a room, the way that you enroll people into what you're saying is with the story, is you meet them where they're at. One of my speaking mentors, her name is Lisa Nichols, she's amazing, and she says this is called the dip. Okay? So, right, when you're up on stage, there typically is like just subconscious the distance between, whether it's like, you know, you're on stage and I'm just whoever in the audience, there's a disconnect there. And so your job as a speaker is to fill disconnect. but it's not by necessarily pulling people up to where you are compared to meeting them where they're at. And that's the dip. So if you can imagine kind of a cliff, and you go down into the dip of whether it's the hard times of your story or the parts where you failed. Right? When it came to speaking, like when I remember when I first started, it was like I too had the same nervous. It was like, okay, I'm like get up here and I'm like talking really fast and I'm breathing really fast. And I can't even catch my breath and I'm like, right, everybody, right?
You sound like a little mouse sometimes. I swear.
Yes, your voice gets really high and you're just like, oh, I got a lot to say. Right? Yeah. That is a natural response, but as it's a natural stress response. So it's okay, but then understanding, okay, like how do we calm that down? How do I ground myself when I get up on stage? How do I like start to read the room? How do I start to like enroll people into what I'm saying? That type of thing. But you get the dip. You gain your audience in the dip by meeting them where they're at, and then you bring them up to then where you want them to go. So when it comes to confidently speaking, again, it's all about your body language. It's all about the connection that you make in the room, because again, it's not like 93% of communication is nonverbal. So when I'm talking with someone, I'm looking at them in their eyes. Right? I'm using my hands. Ron Berge, I don't know what to do with hands. But there's shifting from different sides of the room to like start to enroll people into what it is that we're saying. Tony Robbins has a concept of you enroll the leaders of the room, and how you can kind of start to tell, or there's like typically like leaders in a pod, if you will, like in an area, and if you can enroll them, then the other people around them follow. And so if you can start to read who the leaders are in the room, enroll them, and the people around them start to follow. So, and some of that, I mean, it takes practice, obviously, but the biggest thing, or another big thing that I really learned was to stop waiting for invitations, right? Because like even as I wrote my book and had a bunch of other messages and I had a lot of some stuff to say and I'd been through all this growth and working on these different stories, and I'm like sitting in the audience and I'm like, I could totally like do way better than that girl. Right? Anybody?
Yeah.
Right?
Like, what did I just sit through?
For sure, right? And so some of that is not only creating the platform as a leader, as a speaker, as an influencer, like having that content. And then there's also this balance of stopping or not waiting for an invitation anymore, right? To someone else's stage, to someone else's table, to someone else's whatever. And I'm gonna start to create it myself. Right? So that then I can invite people to my stage. I can invite people to my table. And that's a big difference, because then you start to get the content and you start to see then a lot of other people, a lot of other speakers are starting to see you doing this thing, and then the invitations come. But it's not until they see you as you see you. And a lot of that comes without waiting for the invitation. So yes, you're probably going to do your own event soon. But that'll be so good. Before we end, I actually do want to challenge you guys. We're going to practice a little bit, and I'm going to have you come and lead from the front of the room. So I have you practice what's called your signature statement. This is something that we do in Business and Bubbly, our socials. And it's who you are, who you serve, or who you are, who you serve, and the result that you give them. But before you come on stage, I actually want you're gonna come up. We're gonna be your biggest fans, okay? Because it can be scary to come up and lead from the front of the room, but in our rooms, you can imagine, on average, we meet about 10,000 people in our life. That's about the size of the Roman Coliseum. And how many of us have enough people in the cheap seats? Right? So in Business and Bubbly, in our rooms, we We are each other's biggest fans because we are the women in the arena and we're in the front row. Okay? So when a woman comes up on stage, we're actually going to be her biggest fans, like obnoxiously biggest fans. Okay? Like we are clearing. Carrie's got a good clap. Like we are like doing a Carrie clap. We are whooping it up. We are woo woo girls now. Right? Like her biggest fan, because a big fear and how we start to reframe that. Right, is I come up on stage and it's crickets, or I show up in a room and no one's there. Right, nobody comes to my thing. So we're going to start to reframe that a little bit by being each other's biggest fans. And you're going to say again your signature statement. But before you start that, I actually want you, one of the things to do is you get grounded. So you stand, take a deep breath, take a look around the room, and then you start. Okay, so it's not like this rushed like. Hi, Charity. Right. Okay, so right, does that make anybody else nervous even just seeing that?
Oh,
right?
yes.
Right? So slow down a second. Plant yourself, ground yourself. Take a deep breath as you look around, and then you start. And start to speak from this lower register in your chest. Versus the nervous, hi, I'm up here, right? Because that actual tone of voice makes everyone else in the room nervous. So when you speak, it's actually more calming and grounding to speak more from your chest voice instead of in your head voice or in this tinny. She's a singer, she knows. Right? So you're gonna say your signature statement, who you are, who you serve, and the result that you give them. Super simple, and it just then comes with repetition to lead from the front of the room. And then we're just going to talk a little bit about at the end about like what you felt, what came up for you. That way you kind of know what to work on.
Time is up.
Oh, is it?
We got 5 minutes ago.
Did we?
Sorry.
Our time is up.
Our time is up.
Dang.
No.
As the time Nazi,
I know,
you're in trouble.
I am. I don't even have my own thing. Okay.
Is this the lunch break right now, or?
No, we have one more keynote for
Oh,
Monica. So we're going to be her biggest fans.
Yes.
Okay.
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 Dang.
Dang.
We could do it with like get a partner and then like do it with each other.
Great idea. Let's do it. Go ahead and stand up, find a partner, do it really quick. Use the front of the room if you want.
Let's do
Go
it.
ahead, right?
Yeah, sure.
Hi, I'm here, guys.
Okay, so my name is Andrea. I am with Homes of Idaho. I am a real estate agent, but kind of find ourselves a real residential management. So we manage women work with people, and the result was then we're lucky enough to have them come in with their families and other jobs that make us stay there. Well, my name is Selena Garrett. I know. Oh, my salon's